Peace and blessings. This is the Vanguard Show, episode number 15, sponsored by From Old Guard to Vanguard Photo Exhibit. And today we have a very special guest live from Paris, France. He's a activist, he's a professor, he's a doctor of American civilization, writer, lecturer, and he's really a really impressive young man. And I definitely look forward to letting everybody know about him. And this is Dr. Pierre Cras. How you doing, my brother?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good. How about you? How about
Oh,
you?
pretty good. And I want to make you feel comfortable, so I'm gonna say, bonjour, comment allez-vous?
Eh bien, bonjour, ça va très bien. Merci.
Ah,
Thank you. I'm doing good.
good, good. Let's see les bons rouler. So again, tell us about your history, brother, because last time I met with you, we were in Paris, and
Mhm,
I was just honored that you came by the hotel where I was staying, along with meeting Emanuela that we
mhm,
met in the lobby. But tell people about your history, scholarly history as well as your activist history.
mhm. Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me in your show. I'm very honored to do this.
Okay.
And yeah, it was my pleasure to meet you last time when you were in Paris. And yeah, I feel honored to have once again this opportunity to meet you in such particular circumstances, since we were really close from knowing all those troubles with the coronavirus and so on and
Yeah,
so forth.
absolutely.
So yeah, I felt very blessed, very blessed to meeting you.
Definitely.
To sum the whole thing up, I think the first time I've been familiarized or accustomed to this kind of, how could I say this, this kind of activism and branch of activism. And by that I mean, in France it's really complicated actually, since we share some common ideas with African American activism, but since the history of the country, the past of the country is very different, well, we split on several occasions, but still we share some common ideas and common political, how could I say this, political ideas too, and political movements too. But basically, I think the first time I've been put in contact with some critical race theory, for instance, I think it was during my high school time, like most of the people here, I guess. I think I was like 16 or 17, something. And it was like a shock to me, because such, unfortunately, I think right now times are changing, but
Right.
back in the day, when I was growing up, it was not the case at all. And unfortunately, we were not really, by we, I mean people from African descent here in France, we were not put in contact with, I don't know, with critical race thinking, critical authors like Frantz Fanon,
Yeah.
although
Mhm.
he is French and mostly wrote in French, but still. And I think the very first shock I've had was reading Malcolm X. So
Mhm.
actually, this is a pretty good opportunity to mention him. You
Yes,
know, since it
absolutely.
is the anniversary right now today of his assassination. So yeah, I think the very first example I have had been put into contact was as last speech at the Audubon Ballroom,
Mhm.
and it was really really something. I did, to be honest with you, I did not understand the full the weight of it. You know,
Right.
the whole thing, the whole concepts that he was very familiar with, but still I was at the very beginning of my own path. And after several years, I was, how could I say this? I don't know. There's no proper equivalent, I think, of a community college in France, but still during high school, mid school, I was enrolled in the equivalent of it,
Okay.
which means that those kind of schools, high schools, are, well, public schools. They
Mhm.
don't
Right.
have many founds,
Mhm.
and still it was very tough times actually. But anyway, I, like I said, I was really shocked and really interested in the way Malcolm X put the things into perspective and think about, his own blackness, his place in the world, his mission. And then after several years, I enrolled into university, public university still.
Okay.
And it's really interesting because we don't have, once again, to be honest with you, we don't have here in France the equivalent of Black studies or African American studies departments.
Hmm.
Still, it is really institutional thing. It's really deeply rooted in the institution. Since we're supposed to be French institution, we're supposed to obey to how could I say this? Yeah, to obey to the French government's considerations and laws. And because France is supposed to be a democracy, supposed to be, as we say here, but it's not the equivalent from an American perspective. But here we consider it as we say in French, une république, so republic,
Right.
and also democracy. So it's nothing to do with Republicans, but still,
Right.
because
Okay.
Not, at least I gotta be honest with you.
At least not in America.
No, it's completely different. But still, because our country is a democracy, well, namely a democracy, supposedly,
Right.
and because we're also a republic, supposedly, once again, we're not supposed to take into consideration such divisive, although it's not really divisive, but divisive elements such as the color of your skin, your ethnicity, your religion, and so on and so forth. So we're supposed to be all equally citizens of a same country, which means that we cannot, last but not least, but we cannot organize as a community, for instance, or as a patchwork of communities, because it's really opposite. It's really on the opposition with this ideal of Republican fraternity and so on and so forth. But still, this is the reason why we don't have, like I said, it's purely institutional, it's historical too. This is the reason why we don't have Black studies departments or such departments that are labeled as Black studies or there are some African history departments here,
Right.
but it's really centered centered and aligned with African history, and by Africa I mean the continent itself. So it's very, very, very recent. I mean, if you consider it from a purely historical standpoint, it's kind of recent to consider the diasporas, for instance, which includes African American diaspora, and also the French diaspora, European diasporas, and so on and so forth. But still, while I was enrolled in the BA, it's the equivalent of the BA program here in France, I really started to read a lot about different theories, because I was really, really eager, really eager to feed my soul, to feed my my research and my personal history with such examples, which includes, such very, very famous examples of critical thinkers, American ones like W.E.B. Du Bois, for instance, which was extremely important to me. The doubled consciousness is really something that it's still a thing even today, So W.E.B. Du Bois, like I said, Malcolm X, Dr. Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture, and more generally the Black Panther thinkers, and also the Black Panther artists, such as Emory Douglas.
Yes. And you had him in Paris, right? Tell us a little bit about the exhibit you did, organized the exhibit in Paris that you did.
Yeah. I did this, and it was really a big thing to organize. And right now, I feel very lucky to do this still, because, like I said, thanks to coronavirus, it's not a thing anymore. We cannot do this anymore, at least with the same form. So yeah, I invited Emory in 2016, I guess. So that was the last end of our PhD. So I was on the verge of finishing it, completing it, and I have invited it in him, excuse me, thanks to my university, which was once again a public university. And historically speaking, this university, which is Paris 3, so La Sorbonne, but it's kind of, a different part of La Sorbonne. It's very difficult to grasp even for French people.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
don't worry about it. It constantly changes because of, different mergings and so on and so forth. But yeah, I don't want to bother you with this.
Oh, okay.
But still, yeah, it's academic struggle on a daily basis. But yeah, I invited him thanks to this university, and he stayed in Paris for, I think, maybe a couple of days or 3 days, less than a week in 2016.
Okay.
And we were lucky enough to hear him during a presentation, during a seminar of African American studies, because historically speaking, this university is linked with the development of American studies and specifically African American studies. Well, at least it was the case during the 1960s and 70s.
Okay.
So yeah, historically it was significant to have him here, and it was really something big, because first and foremost it is Emory.
Yes, absolutely. That's enough right there.
Exactly. So yeah, the brother is very historically significant, and his experience and his words were really precious, and especially since, like I told you, there's no such thing as a Black Studies department in France. It really meant something to us to have him here with us, and it was really enlightening for many people here. So yeah.
Okay. Well, my wife is from Louisiana as well as my family. Even though
Mhm.
I guess technically I was born in Miami actually, but Louisiana is the only place that has maintained the, I guess, French element. It having parishes. The rest of the country has counties, and I think my wife could probably speak to that as well about some of the differences there, where they had a broken style of French, right?
Yes, it was called Creole at the time.
Hmm.
So what it was to make sure that those that enslaved us could not understand what we were talking about, would
Hmm.
actually take broken French and also some of the African traditions and mix it up in order to speak and have our own language that they couldn't understand some of the, how to say, strategies they were
Hmm.
creating.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And were you aware that Louisiana is very distinct out of all the states within the United States in terms of, being a little different than the rest?
And that's why we were called a melting pot, because we
Hmm.
were actually colonized by multiple different groups.
Hmm.
And we actually have, and still till today, keep some of the traditions. But however, because as you stated before, our history is basically a mystery to us, but part
Hmm.
of it, the undertones are still there. So for instance, what we call voodoo,
Hmm.
as it's now related to, is as evil. However, back then it was a tradition, but it's because of how we were raised. Everybody now thought it meant evil. But back then it
Hmm.
was actually a form of religion.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
And
you were aware of the culture in Louisiana?
Sort of, but it's, to be honest with you, once again, it's not my. I'm not really specialist of it, but still, I knew that Louisiana was a French territory
Right.
mhm.
that has been sold to America, I think, in 1803 or something.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's really interesting. The fact that you mentioned voodoo, for instance, that
Right.
was a traditional form of African spirituality,
Right.
and also a way of seeing the world. Besides the fact that it was a religious movement that also served as a political thing, and political, how could I say this? Political value and political thing that was used, political elements, especially in Haiti.
You're
For
right.
instance, during the Haitian Revolution, it was used in order to, as you said, to gather together the enslaved people, and the fact that they were able to pass and also to transmit such cultural elements is really strong and really inspiring too, because like I said, it's served, excuse me, both as a cultural element, as a way of maintaining a sense of solidarity, of something that that you that you came with, and that you brought from your own ancestors' land, but also as a political way of gathering people. So very, very interesting history indeed. Yeah, but I didn't know, and like I said, I'm not a specialist in Louisiana history, but still very, very interesting to hear.
Oh, okay. And you spent some time at USC, did you not? You lived in and studied in Los Angeles?
And I was going to ask you on that note, because I did see you were there for 2 years. You studied as well as taught, correct? So
Mhm.
can you tell us a little bit about the cultural difference when you got there, and how did you feel and what did you learn from that experience?
Hmm. Yeah, I've been lucky enough once again, because one of the first, I think, the very first major cultural and I must say financial difference between universities in France and in United States is the tuition fees.
Mm.
And
Yeah, right.
uh,
Yes.
yeah,
That's true.
and because I was working during my thesis, I was working on the cartoons and especially the archetypes, caricatures, and stereotypes of Black people through American cartoons and the way those cartoons, those animated films, reused some cultural, political, ideological, and aesthetics elements from many different sources, like political cartoons in the press,
Mhm.
like also blackface minstrelsy. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, no doubt.
uh, and also, for instance, well, movies with real actors, and because of this, I was very, 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 yeah, like I said, eager to travel to USC and to study the primary materials that I could find here. And like I said, the major, major difference between our two countries is tuition fees.
Mhm.
And fortunately, I was on a scholarship, so thanks to this international exchange program, I was lucky enough to benefit from it, to benefit both from the teaching over there,
Mhm.
and I was once again very lucky to meet some people like Todd Boyd.
Okay.
He's
Oh
really
yeah, yeah, you're Professor Boyd, right.
yeah, Professor Boyd, for
He's in the
instance.
film, is it the film department at USC, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, I was enrolled to one of his courses,
Okay.
and yeah, that was really, really interesting experience. And also, I cannot recall his name, her name, excuse me,
Mhm.
but still, she is. I will find it later on
Okay,
after
okay,
the show.
okay. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all right.
Uh, but yeah, professor in African American film studies, and it was
Mhm.
really, really interesting to compare the cultural differences both among students, because the vast majority of students were African Americans or from African descent in this class, and on the other hand, also the teaching differences, so the course differences also were really interesting. But how could I say this? Because it's not really different. I think the teaching methods maybe are kind of different. The
Mhm.
way of the perspectives are a little bit different, but still it's pretty much the same thing. Although, like I said, because I'm coming from a public university, uh, we don't have the same how could I say, I don't know the proper term in English for this, but we don't have the same facilities.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah,
Oh, okay. All right.
I
And
really
what?
enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and it was really interesting
Okay.
to see that everything was made on purpose to make you feel comfortable, with
Okay.
this whole thing, this whole history, and basically there was no taboo, and I
Mhm.
really enjoy this. Really enjoy this. This very very fluid type of teaching, very open-minded also type of teaching, and the whole dynamic, the hierarchy dynamic between the professors and also the students is completely different from France and from Europe in general.
Mhm.
It was most likely an exchange, like a dialogue between students and professors, which is not the case at all. Well, among the young professors, it is, and I'm still trying
All
to
right.
push in this way and trying to to do this in my own classes.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
still, it's really different from our European tradition.
Okay. And what did you discover outside the campus in Los Angeles? In terms of getting to know the city, getting to know the history of the city.
Actually, sort of, because it was really time consuming to be there, to
Okay.
study full time, plus doing the job because I was teaching also French over there. So yeah, it was really, really time consuming activities. But still, yeah, I tried to go to Crenshaw, for instance.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
All right.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
it's really huge in terms of culture. So
Mhm.
I was there. I also tried to go to a couple of museums, especially the African American Museum.
Right there
Mhm.
next to USC. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, and thanks to those people, I met there some activists also, whether they were Latin American activists or African American activists. And those guys put me in contact with Emory Douglas.
Oh,
Oh,
So
cool.
okay.
yeah, and I really enjoy this. It's completely different from France. The maybe I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm coming from the outside, because I'm coming
Mhm.
from abroad. But to me, it was really there was this how could I say this? There was this sense of solidarity between different communities. And
Mhm.
Mhm.
also because, like you said, I'm also an activist. I've
Right.
been to the May Day demonstrations in order to I think it was I think the I don't know the proper term once again in English for this, but I think the whole goal of the protest was in order to acquire um, more rights for illegal how would I say this, illegal immigrants,
Oh, okay.
illegal
Right. Right. Right.
Mhm.
aliens, yeah, and also the workers, the social workers.
Right.
So the May Day it was really good to see so many people gather together in the same place, which is something that I try to take with me,
Oh, okay.
and like I said, all the sense of solidarity between the Brown Berets, the former members of the Black Panthers, it's
Mhm.
really something that I have to take into consideration, and that I try to replicate here in a different way, in a different form,
Mhm.
Right.
because, like I said, our militant traditions are really different one from each other. But still, I'm trying to emulate this sense of solidarity on a daily basis.
Okay. And I know our office was about 4 blocks from the USC campus, matter of fact, with the Panther Vanguard International headquarters, and about 7 blocks from the 41st and Central
Mm.
office, where there was the attack on the Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party. What kind of history have you done in terms of study and on the Black Panther movement in general in
Mhm.
within the United States?
Mhm. Um, Actually, since it was not the major topic of my thesis, of my PhD thesis, I did it. But I mean, I did study. I did continue to study this whole history, but still, it was not the central. It was not the core concept. It was not the core history behind the whole thesis. But I was, like I said, lucky enough to see and to interview also Emory Douglas, and also to interview some different people on the Bay Area.
Hmm. Okay.
So not directly on USC or the blocks around USC, but from the Bay Area, people who were really attached to mix both the visual, the aesthetics, and also the revolution.
Mm.
And that was once again the continuity of my previous studies, because for during my MA, so maybe it was a long time ago, it was
Okay.
like almost 10 years ago something.
Okay.
I worked on the Black Panther Party, but from the French perspective, which means since I majored in contemporary history during my MA, and more specifically on the political international history, I was very attached to prove that the Black Panther Party for self-defense, then the Black Panther Party was not only a national movement, it was international at its core,
Right.
and was also really attached to create some international solidarity with the third world, for instance. So not only through the image, not only through the style, but also through the substance. And this is the reason why I was very, very interested in the fact that the Black Panthers, not only what's his name again, not only Eldridge Cleaver, for instance,
Right.
Who lived in Algiers for a certain time, but also Angela Davis, for instance.
Yes.
But many Black Panthers actually did not took no, it wasn't a trip for them, but they passed. They went through Paris. You know,
Okay. Right.
yeah, they went through Paris because Paris during the 1960s was really, really something big in terms of organization for the third world, because you already know this, but France was a colonial country, and because of this, or thanks to this, we still don't know. It's both a blessing and a curse at the same time. But because of this, many people from the former colonies, whether it was in Africa, Northern Africa, or Asia, or from Asia, were studying over there in Paris. And Paris was considered during the 1960s and 70s as the capital of the third world, which is
Mhm.
kind of surprising, but still.
Yeah, it is. It is actually. Yeah. Because I always thought it was maybe this. I don't, in terms of, I guess, refuge, especially for revolutionaries, it was almost like the second refuge, because Cuba was always the
Mhm.
proximity
Mhm.
and the most receptive. And then Paris was right up there, getting Eldridge Cleaver later on, after he left Algiers, getting Donald Cox, who's a prominent member of the Black Panther Party. So France has had that duality in terms of
Mhm.
being a colonial power, but at the same time receptive to
Mhm.
progressive revolutionaries. Would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, how is the pandemic affecting Paris right now in terms of people? Yeah, how is it there? You just ask.
It doesn't sound good at all.
Oh wow! Oh
Yeah,
wow!
because we actually are in the middle of curfew measures, so you have to stay at your home from 6 p.m. So yeah, it's really disturbing, and we're not really enjoying it right now, especially if you work in academics, because well, like I said, I'm teaching right now at a public university, so it's really difficult for students who live, especially in poverty, to maintain a good, sort of good quality of life,
Mhm.
since the jobs, the very, meager part of jobs they could get is now, it's not a thing anymore. So they
Right.
cannot count on their student jobs anymore. They cannot count, financially speaking, on also their internships anymore. It's not a thing anymore. So it's really, in a way, it's really depressing. But still,
Mhm.
like we said, struggle continues,
Right.
and we have to keep the fight in order to fight for them, to fight for maintaining also the quality of teaching, which is really a thing today. I don't know if you heard about this, but the French government in the past couple of weeks is basically reactivating the McCarthyism
Oh
against, yeah,
wow!
against,
What?
like they say, and the term doesn't refer to anything actually, which is tragic. But they're in the middle of a witch hunt of, like they say, the Islamo-gauchiste in French, which means the left, the Islamic left, which is something that doesn't exist apart from the rhetoric of the alt right. So yeah, it's really complicated right now, since isolation complicates everything in terms of social gathering, but also in terms of activism. So yeah, it's
Mhm.
really complicated to do it. But still, like I said, we struggle, and the struggle continues.
Okay. And what, in terms of the mobilization worldwide, and France, and especially Paris, was almost like one of the Vanguard international countries for police brutality responses.
Hmm.
Why was that so effective all over the world, and especially in Paris?
Hmm. Because I think that, like I said, we have this very deeply rooted and ancient history, and tense relationships between the young people, whether they're from African descent or from Muslim countries on Northern Africa. And because of this very complicated relationship between French states, as very important as a former colonist country, and also those people who were born in France but are still not considered as fully French, if I could say so,
Mm-hmm.
purely French, which is once again really it's really close from what you saw, not you personally, but what you saw in the U.S. during the 1920s.
Oh,
You know, the
absolutely.
fact that many laws were passed against immigration because it was a time of uh, of very deeply rooted anguish towards what could possibly come from the outside. So it's pretty much the same, not the same thing, but in a certain way it is. And also we share some similarities between what we call here the suburbs or banlieue here in France,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
or the what's its name again in the United States?
Like suburbs, maybe.
The suburbs in the US is very a little bit different from here.
Okay.
No, I was thinking about maybe the downtowns. Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
it's the equivalent in terms of social population, in terms of economic population, in terms of economy. It is the equivalent basically, and it's during the 1960s and 70s. People came here in France, people from the former colonies, in order to find some job, in order to find some work. And because they could not afford to pay the rent inside Paris, so inside the city, they were put into the margins of the city,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically the story of what we call banlieue, so the suburbs here.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see, it is quite similar to what happened with the downtowns in the US, with the
Okay.
huge
Okay.
urban areas in the US. And as long as I can remember, even during the 1970s, there was this, and it's very a colonial thing, actually. It takes its roots to the colonial history. But the militarization of public spaces, the fact of sort of slow militarization of the public spaces in suburbs and here in France, the tense relationships between the former immigrants and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, basically those who are not considered as fully citizens, fully French citizens, you know,
Right.
and also the tense relationships between a whole part of the youth over there and the police forces is really similar to what you've experienced during the 1960s. I'm not saying that it's the same thing because it's not, but
Mm-hmm.
still we share some common social dynamics. And this is probably the reason why it echoes, you know, in the US, it echoes some, you know, topics and some dynamics that you already had to face with during the 1960s and 70s. Because like the Black Panthers said in Oakland, for instance, in the Oakland ghettos, the police forces were considered as an occupation army, and the feeling is kind of mutual over here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, you have to constantly justify that you're legitimately have the right to be here in public spaces. So yeah, it's and also what's the name in English for this? The harassment by the
Mm-hmm.
police
Right.
also
Right.
is a very living thing
The
here.
repression. Right.
Absolutely. So yeah, the racial profiling is a thing here. So you can be arrested just because your face doesn't match with the common ideas of being French in here, or because you're suspected of doing something wrong, or because you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to be here. You know, so yeah, we really struggle with this on a daily basis, but still, I think it was, you know, the result of the very long continuum of colonial history, because the methods, the
Mm-hmm.
repression methods, were first tested on the colonies, and then they were imported here in French soil, in the suburbs.
Okay.
So the way of, how could I say this, but the management, it's almost like management, but
Yes.
yeah, the management, like I said, the military, this very military thing, military aspect of the relationships, the very tense relationships between youth and the police forces, is a thing not only from the past, but also that is inspired by many practices in the world. So I think we shared some common dynamics, although it's a little bit different since the history is not the same. But yeah, and I think, to answer to your question, and I think it is mainly because why such tragic events like the George Floyd assassination
Mm-hmm.
found a very, very heavy. It really echoed over here. So yeah.
Wow. What is, and Kathy, you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say that normally it seems like different places in the world, same
Mhm.
issue. And it's like, what keeps feeding it? It's like it's nothing but hate. And it's
Mhm.
like we need to come together as one and understand we just people. This is one earth. Guess what? We all got to live in it. And it
Mhm.
doesn't matter where you come from, as long as you treat people the way you want to be treated. I think at that point in time, we will come to peace.
Mhm.
And I was going to ask you, did you finally see Judas and the Black Messiah movie? I was curious of that. Did you get it?
Not yet. Not
Oh
yet. I'm
wow.
so
Okay.
frustrated right now
Oh wow.
because I don't even know if this movie will be released in here.
Okay.
Oh,
So yeah, I'm still waiting since, it's, how could I say this? I think the financial policies are a little bit different, and distribution is really complex
mhm.
regarding what could potentially be released here and what it is in the US. So yeah, not yet, but I definitely want to watch it.
Okay. And I was going to ask, what movie, or I should say, what? Well, let's say this: what were some of your heroes, if you will, in terms of myself? It was Malcolm X. That's why I
Mhm.
wanted to have you on today to talk about, the influence of Malcolm X on you, and he
Mhm.
had influence on me. But there were any others icons that you really took strength from?
Mhm. Well, the Black Panthers in their entirety.
Okay, all
So
right,
yeah,
generational.
basically, yeah, the whole thing, the whole so not only a single person, not only a single member, but yeah, the whole thing was really really inspiring, I think. The way, more generally, but yeah, I can mention many heroes, whether they're from America or not.
Mhm.
But yeah, for instance, so basically all the Black Panthers, yourself, what you did
Oh, thank you, brother.
yeah,
Appreciate
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
because you're the second generation Panther, so yeah, I have to pay a tribute to what you did.
Yeah,
So
and I
but
also know you love Jean-Jacques Dessalines, right? I mean,
yeah.
I have a true regard. Tell us about the pridefulness that Black people in Paris and
Mhm.
throughout the world have for the former have for Haiti in terms of liberating themselves. How
Mhm.
important should that be for future generations to learn about and the
Mhm.
impact on you as well?
Mhm. Yeah, because that's probably the first thing that is how could I say this? Yeah, the first thing that is mentioned here when you talk about 80 is the fact that if you take into consideration the European standards form of government, it was considered as the very first Black owned and Black governed country in the world.
Right.
So, and once again, I have to emphasize this, if you take into consideration the European standards of a time. Because, of course, as you know, before colonization in Africa, many countries had their own system of government, which has been
Mhm.
dismantled by colonization,
Right.
especially during the 19th century. And so, yeah, Jean-Jacques Dessalines and many people from the Asian Revolution, or also from more generally the West Indies,
Mhm.
are extremely influential over here in France, and we try to cultivate their legacy. And I'm thinking about, for instance, the African descent students. So the, for instance, Martinican students, the Guadeloupean students, so people from the West Indies who were students in here during the 1930s and 40s, who, for instance, released this very, very interesting and very, very marking student review, L'étudiant noir, or the Black Students, which was definitely something inspired by the new Negro movement. So
Okay.
yeah, and also more generally from the Harlem Renaissance. So yeah, there was also this huge movement of negritude in here, the negritude, which was a literary as well as cultural movement in France that was launched during the 1930s and 1940s, and launched by some people like Aimé Césaire, for instance, who was a Martinican politician, Léopold Sédar Senghor, who was Senegalese. He has been Senegalese president. Léon Gontran Damas, also, who was I think he was Guyanese writer. So many people from basically, and this is the reason why it is so interesting to be here, to live here in Paris, because we're trying to cultivate this heritage from many Black thinkers in the world. So yeah, I think that marginally we try to mix and to emphasize what ideas politically and culturally were the most important, the most relevant to the times, and try to do something else with it. So try to adapt them to our current preoccupations and current struggles. And just to give you an example, because I'm thinking about this right now, but did you know that in 1956 in Paris at La Sorbonne University, I think it was the second one or the first one, I'm not sure, but still it was the very first Congress of the Black writers and thinkers and poets that was held in here in Paris in 1956.
Oh, well, okay. I wasn't aware of that, actually. Well, I might have been. I probably forgot.
And people
but
like,
tell us about that, yeah.
Yeah, people like it. It was really, really, really intense and really motivating. As an historian, you don't necessarily. I mean, it helps you to have this different perspective on the world, and because you're constantly referring to what happened in the past, you're put some distance with your subjects of interest, but still, it could also help you to put it into the world, the current world. So you're constantly doing the link between the past and the present, and it was really interesting in this sense, since this was a really big gathering during several days, and people, I think, not Du Bois was. I don't think he was there, but Aimé Césaire was here. Richard Wright was there. So many critical thinkers, whether they were poets or
James Baldwin, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's really interesting to compare those common histories that we have in this particular sense between United States and France, and more specifically Paris, actually. But yeah, it's really something that we could take pride of still.
Absolutely, yeah. well, I was going to say that also Paris seemed to be this cultural mecca for Black people leaving an oppressive America. And, from the jazz people to, what was the first one? The dancer that became, she actually became part of the Baker.
Josephine Baker.
Josephine Baker, you're dealing with James Baldwin, you're dealing with, as you said, Richard Wright. What do you think was the draw for Black Americans to come to Paris? Was it the same kind of feeling or fervor regarding opportunity and colorlessness, or what?
Yeah, I think it's really complicated since it really evolved from this period, and since America, well, United States was still segregated. It was really a shock for instance, the African American veterans who came here, who came to fight to the European and the French front during the Second World War, and then came back to the United States, for the most part of them, to southern states where segregation, legal segregation, was still a thing, and will still be a thing till 1964. So I think there was this feeling of being accepted the way they were, because they were African Americans and they were not considered as subclass citizens. And they had the right to share a meal or to sit at the same table, white people who were there back then. But still, you have to take into consideration that the fact they were Americans really did it really brought something different. And because of this, African Americans were not considered and were not treated the same way as Africans were in France. So yeah, there was this whole this whole what's the proper term in English for this? I'm not sure still, but
what kind of colonial subjects viewpoint as opposed
yeah,
to
absolutely.
visitors being African Americans? Would that
Yeah, yeah, I think they were treated on a better way, if I could say so, than Africans or North African or Arabian people, or basically people from the French colonies, because they were subverted to, they had to deal with a different hierarchy based on, racial and social ladder, if I could say so. And this did not apply to African Americans because they were considered first and foremost as Americans. So yeah, it was really different. But I think the major idea behind this was the lack of legal and institutional segregation. But still, like I said, it's very sneaky because today, like I told you, mainly people from the suburbs and mainly people from the past time immigration are not considered and feel not considered as fully French, and there's some tense discourses and a huge difficulty to communicate with mostly institutions. So yeah, once again, it's constantly fuels this discussion about institutional racism, like you said, racism in police forces, and yeah, it's still a thing. So I know it sounds surprising to see that during the 1940s, 50s, 60s, it was considered as something very open-minded. The country, I mean, the country was considered as something very open-minded, but I think it was mainly because United States were still in the middle of the desegregation, the very slow desegregation process, which was not a thing here. But yeah.
Because I was going to say, listening to some of them on talk shows or speaking back then, all of it was feeling a sense of freedom. That's what it was.
And the night before we were leaving, we were able to hook up at the hotel. You come by and visited. You had just gone to London. That was your first time, which is very surprising to me. Tell me about why it took so long to take that 2-hour train ride over to London.
All I'm gonna say is that's a shame.
Yeah, I know it's a damn shame, but still yeah, I was and I don't know, it was only for leisure actually, and I was also really curious to see, even though it was a very short trip. So I think we'll have to go there once again, but I really would like to talk and to speak with Black people from there, and to see the way they are organizing and the way they're struggling against maybe some. I'm not a specialist of the UK history, so I don't want to say anything stupid. But yeah, I'm really curious to be put into contact with people from the UK and mostly people from African descent, from the Caribbean, and to see also the cultural differences, and maybe I don't know, to organize something after the coronavirus, of course, once when it will be done. But still, I really want to say this. But yeah, I don't know. It's because I didn't have any occasion to do this before, but still, I want to know more about this. So,
well, I have a friend. His name is Adinka Mendinke. He's a Westminster professor that I definitely would love for you and him to hook up at some point. He's professor like yourself, excellent young man, and I'd love for you to kind of get together with him. I'll share his information with you as well. Yeah, and also I was going to say, what projects do you have? I know everything's in the context of the pandemic, so
Yes.
I know it's hard. But what future projects do you have in the works?
Yeah, like you said, everything has been postponed right now, so we're
Mhm.
trying to live on a daily basis.
Right.
So nothing is certain right now. But yeah, I'm working right now on something completely different, although it is also linked with social and social history of the US. But I'm working right now on a book
Oh.
that try to establish the link between horror movies in the US and social history. So basically, the whole premise of it is to understand how did the horror movies from United States studios try to reflect social anguishes, moral panics, and
Mhm.
basically the excuse me, United States crises and anguishes, mostly towards the outsider or towards yeah, economic. I don't know, economic or social panics or yeah, scares. And it's really interesting to watch some movies like Get Out or
Oh
what
yeah,
Mhm.
is
yes,
or
absolutely.
Antebellum, for instance,
Right, right.
which is definitely a reflection of also turning points in the way that those subjects are showed on screen.
Mm.
So yeah, it's really interesting to see this. And I'm also working, but it's still a project right now. I'm still working on a biography of Oscar Michaud.
Oh, okay, okay, all
All
right,
right.
all right. Now
Yeah.
explain who is, for those who don't know, who is that?
He was a pioneer of what we call the race movies. So basically, there were movies during the 1920s.
Oh, I know who you're talking about exactly. But please just keep explaining. I know who you're talking about. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, he was a pioneer of race movies that were made in order to counter the influence, the very negative influence and negative depictions of African Americans in The Birth of a Nation in 1915.
Yes.
So yeah, he was a pioneer of mixing both an activist message to convey basically a message. Conscious message through the use of pictures and through the use of movies.
Mm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
I'm really interested in the way he mixed both dynamics.
Okay. And were you a fan of they call the genre in the early 70s the black exploitation films. But for me, seeing the black guy get the girl and live at the end was always a thing, and
Mhm.
fighting the oppressor. I think of
Absolutely.
things like Three the Hard Way and Foxy
Yeah.
Brown. Very
Mhm.
empowering films. Were you influenced by those?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was crazy about it when I discovered it. I think it was maybe 10 years or 15 years from now on. So,
Okay.
yeah, it was really something. But still, I understand the criticism against those movies
Mhm.
because if you consider them from a more recent prism, from a more recent perspective, some of those movies were definitely sexist. That's for sure.
Mhm.
Right, right.
Uh, but it was the 1970s on the other hand. So yeah. And like you said, it was also empowering on the other hand, but it was also complicated since those movies, I mean, the very beginning of them and the very founding movie was Sweet Sweetback. And definitely it was definitely a rallying cry for
Right.
many black people around the world, and also
Van
Melvin van
Peebles.
Peebles.
Right.
Mhm.
He came here in France, and he was really appreciated as an author in here in France. So yeah, it was really something during the 1970s.
You
And
remember his son, Mario Van Peebles, did Panther,
yeah,
the movie.
Mhm.
Did you ever see
absolutely.
that?
Yeah, I saw
Okay,
it. I saw
okay,
it.
all right, all right.
And
Yeah,
like I said, it's really interesting to analyze from a current perspective because
right.
at the time it was really empowering because it was something that people like you said never saw before. So the dynamics were really different in terms of social representations and so on and so on, but also those movies were made at a goal of exploitation, and they also conveyed a certain imagery, a certain vision
Right.
of African Americans, and also a certain vision of urban areas. And I don't want to say that they replaced because they're cult movies for many people. So I don't want to sound disrespectful or something,
Mhm.
But from our, like I said, from our current perspective, it is sometimes it is problematic as those movies replaced at the end of it, at the end of the mostly at the end of the movements, they replaced some archetypes by other archetypes,
Yeah.
like the pimps, the hookers, and so on and so forth. So
What they call a lumpen proletariats, right?
exactly, exactly. So yeah, no, any, but yeah, I'm a huge fan of it. So I don't want to throw shade on anyone. Once again,
Right.
it's still really interesting to have this criticism against those movies without being too harsh or without being too sarcastic. Or no, I'm a huge fan of him. Huge
Okay.
fan of it.
Yeah, because at that time, if that's all they had, that's what you
Exactly.
had.
Right.
It was better than nothing.
Exactly. Exactly.
So my question to you would be, what got you started on the path of learning our history? And not only just, I see it as in Paris, but you've actually wanted to learn it globally. What
Hmm.
got you started in that?
Hmm. Well, I think the pivotal point was when I read about the Panthers once again, because
Mhm.
they, like I said, were really attached to lead the struggle from an international point of view, and also Malcolm X at the end of his life was really attached uh, to to destroy the bears and to tell people in America that an outside world exists outside of
Mhm.
America.
Right.
And if you don't take into consideration the struggles from the third world back then during the 1960s, during the massive decolonization movements in Africa, for instance, or in Asia,
Mhm.
well, you don't have an access to the full spectrum of
Mhm.
this idea and of this whole movements. So I think it was very the pivotal point was when I read about simultaneously what I read about Frantz Fanon, and the way Frantz Fanon was also a source of inspiration with Malcolm X, like you said, brother. He was the
Right.
progenitor Panther.
Right.
So yeah, and I think it was really when I took into consideration the influences, the international influences of the Black Panther Party, that I definitely realized that the struggle has to be international.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I think the influence of Frantz Fanon's "Wretched of the Earth" in particular, it was
Mhm.
required reading for us, even though second generation, first generation, I think even some Cubs had to read "Wretched of the Earth" by Frantz Fanon. Was
Mhm.
that book another inspiration for you?
Yeah, although when I read it first, I was very young and it
Mhm.
was very dense, because I think Frantz Fanon knew that he was dying when
Right,
he wrote it
right.
because he had a cancer.
Okay.
And he definitely tried to put everything he could in this book, which is definitely it's definitely something that you have to read. Like you said, it is almost mandatory,
Definitely,
and
absolutely. Mhm.
it's almost mandatory. Even though I don't like to say that a book is mandatory over another, because but still, it is definitely a founding. It's a founding lecture, founding reading um, that could nourish definitely your critical thinking. And yeah, and also, but I think because I was too young back then and I did not really fully grasp the meaning of it, I think I had been most influenced when I was young, at least, by Black Skin, White Mask, which was
Mhm.
really something that it really it was really a hit. It was it was really shocking the way he put into words some things that I was feeling back then.
Mm.
But since I was not able to, like I said, to grasp the full spectrum of it, because you already know, even when you're a kid, that racism is a thing. You already know that you're not white, so that you
Right.
had to deal with
Mhm.
very different dynamics. So you're really aware of this, but you don't really know how to put words in this because you don't really master, the theoretical tools to say it
Mhm.
properly.
Right.
And since the moment I've read this Black Skin, White Mask, if it was the end and the beginning of it.
Oh wow, wow.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. And final two questions. One, the fire next time. James Baldwin spent some considerable time in Paris.
Mhm.
He was one of the more, in terms of just the overall movement, not just the, Black civil rights movement and I guess the uh, international movement or Nation of Islam. He was very,
Mhm.
he kind of put it on point. That was, I can't, I guess the Fire Next Time was our version, if you will, American version of, in terms of analysis of Wretched of the Earth, in a sense. Would you say that to a degree?
Yeah, because I think he wrote it in a period, in a period that was definitely once again a turning point in American history,
Mhm.
and not only for African Americans but also for America as a whole. So yeah, I think it was once again a pivotal essay, and I don't know how to say this, but it was not the exact equivalent because, like I said, once again, historical dynamics regarding colonialism are a little bit different, but still, this concept of being colonized from the inside, which is a
Mhm.
thing
Yes.
that the Panthers really, once again, and Malcolm X and Frantz Fanon for both African Americans and also West Indian people, so people from the French Caribbean, because French Caribbean are simultaneously a post-colonial as well as a post-slavery society.
Right.
So yeah, it's really complicated, and in a certain way, it's some kind of close from African American status, from African American history, and what African Americans had to deal with. So yeah, this very, very striking striking concept of the colonized from the inside was really, really a thing. And like you said, it was not the equivalent because it's a little bit different,
Right.
but it was as striking as The Wretched of the Earth was for the Third World when it was published. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay. Well, it has definitely been a pleasure speaking with you, brother.
Likewise.
And I hope, like I say, once this is all over, we could actually bring the From Old Guard to Vanguard photo exhibit there
Mhm.
when it's safe, if you
Yeah.
will. And how can people reach out to you, contact you, and follow you?
I'm mostly active on Twitter, even though I'm tweeted in French most of the time, but still you can translate my tweets.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, you can try to reach me out on Twitter. So what is my
Oh,
at? It's at Dr. Pierre C. So Dr. Pierre C.
okay.
All attached, and yeah, you can still try to reach me out. So yeah, don't hesitate to write me about anything you want to,
Okay.
and it will be my pleasure to answer to you if you have any questions. So
Okay. Well, thank you so much, brother. It's been a blast, and I look forward
Yes.
to speaking with you again real soon. And safety to all yourself and your loved ones in
mhm.
Paris.
Likewise, likewise. Be safe, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in better circumstances, not in front of a screen,
Right,
but
right.
in
No.
person.
Absolutely. Well, brother,
Mhm.
you have a great day, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank,
having me.
thank you, brother.
Bye
Appreciate it.
bye.
Mhm.
Bye bye.